Okay, thank you so much, the Geospatial Audio team, for that amazing presentation. So our last presentation for today is Moot Court, presented by Veronica Chen, Olivia Chen, Vida Chan, Michelle Hun, and Rosaline Beck. So before we hear from the student team, I'll now pass it over to their PI, John Festinger, and Nikos, I believe.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. With me is Nikos Harris, a wonderful colleague who is Associate Professor of Teaching and Director of Experiential Learning at Allard. I'm an adjunct professor at Allard. In some strange way, this project is actually almost wholly born of the Emerging Media Lab. I attended at the invitation of EML a community of learning event last summer, where I heard a professor from University of Ottawa talk about something called exposure therapy and its use in dealing with patients who had undergone trauma, and the use of exposure therapy through virtual reality. If you were afraid of heights, you could fly in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and that exposure would make you less afraid of heights. So that naturally led to me thinking about what traumatizes law students the most, and what traumatized me the most when I was in law school in 1976. And that's an exercise called the Moot Court, where you argue against a team of other law students in front of real judges. And with that, over to Nikos.
Yeah, it's an incredibly difficult experience for students in their first year of law school to be able to come in and not just give a presentation, but to 3 senior lawyers, and to be in a position of not just articulating their views, but being challenged on them. And that's actually the key to, I think, most discourse, but particularly legal discourse, is getting questions from the decision makers and answering them. And the law school sometimes thinks, let's protect everybody from everything. I think some really good ideas that John has been creating, let's expose them to this in an environment that is comfortable and safe, where they can start working out some of those stressful issues. And the idea became to create a moot court where they at any time could flip open their laptop, be in a very realistic virtual court with a judge, and practice their presentation, including being asked questions by the judge. And I think we thought this was something that was going to take years to put together. And our incredible EML team, I'll turn over to in a moment, has within 6 months very much brought this to fruition. I just want to mention its potential application. All first-year law students, I think, have to go through this Moot experience, and so being able to practice in a virtual environment will assist all of them. It's going to help our upper-year students. We do competitive Moots. I think it can help law students across Canada who have these same issues. I think it can help any student who's having to do a presentation to have a virtual forum, and I think it can help the broader public. We are currently in a crisis of access to justice. About half the people in court these days are representing themselves. That's incredibly intimidating. Having the chance to go into a virtual court and practice your presentation, as I think you'll see, we're able to program in specific questions to their case to be asked by the judge, I think could be a real assistance, not just to lawyers. I think lawyers could use the practice, but people representing themselves, a chance to get familiar with the court environment. I want to turn things over to and recognize Dante. We had the best team. I was a bit of a tech skeptic. I think that's why John told me I had to get involved. They were not about the tech. They were about creating a meaningful learning experience for the students, and that's what drove the project.
Thank you, John and Nikos. Hi, I'm back again. Don't worry, I'm just here to introduce the team. So starting off with our principal investigators that you guys have met already, John and Nikos, as well as Barbara Wayne, who aren't able to be here today, but is here with us in spirit. And we have our project lead, Dante Cerrone, once again. And in development, we have Michelle, Rosaline, and in design, we have myself, Vita Chan, and Veronica Chen.
So as Nikos has just mentioned before, mooting is one of the most stressful events of the first year law experience. As such, our principal investigators wanted to create a tool that would simulate the experience, allowing students to practice their presentation and familiarize themselves with the process. So to best understand our students' mooting experiences, pain points, behaviors, etc., we conducted user interviews with upper year law students who have done moots themselves before. So that is online or in person. With these interviews, we were able to gather valuable research insights and qualitative data to best back our design choices and practices. So for features, we first have a landing page to welcome the users in, and then a home page where users can choose to access mooting resources, or start their simulated moot. Mooting resources include mooting procedures, oral presentation tips, and generally everything a first-year law student would need for a successful moot. We wanted this to be the go-to place where resources are centralized. And then in terms of starting the moot, we have the setup page, which I'm pretty sure my colleagues will dive into in detail in a bit, but here we can customize our mooting experience, whether you are the appellant, the defendant, whether your moot takes place during the daytime, nighttime, and generally whether you want a shorter time period for your oral arguments or a longer one if you're just new to the process. And so once you have customized your mooting experience, you will be brought into the simulated moot. The design of the interface. So the goal was to make a design that encourages and entices the first-year law students to use the app for learning and practice. So we wanted to have a UI that was very welcoming and non-intimidating. And then the UI elements, such as colors, branding, was made to adhere to UBC branding. The most complicated component in our app that is visible on the interface is the setup page, which we'll get into in a bit. Essentially, everything that a user checks or inputs in the options will directly reflect how the presentation component would be sent forward. So like I mentioned before, if you are the appellant, defendant, whether it's daytime, nighttime, etc., all the choices you make on the setup page will be reflected directly into the simulated moot.
Hello. Hi, I'm a developer for this project, and I'm going to explain the general structure of our application. So a lot of our projects that are hosted online on the web page, our project was also made using React, and the 3D models were rendered using React 3 Fiber, which is a React renderer for 3.js. So these are the 5 main components of the application, and these in our backend is defined as a JavaScript file that cleanly separates the responsibilities. It uses something called React use effect hooks to respond to application events such as change of time or a button click. The following are the tools that we use to create the prototypical project that we have right now. React 3 Fiber, as mentioned, was used to render the 3D models. In order to host this on a web page, we used AWS hosting. And in order to create a realistic judge, we used the following tools. Speech synthesis was used to generate the voice of the judge. Blender was used to generate the 3D models that set up the scene, and Deep Motion, Mixamo, and Plask AI were used to create a realistic motion of the judge. And we also explored the use of speech recognition through a module called React Speech Recognition in order to either extract keywords or detect pauses in the student's speech. And Michelle, our other developer, would be introducing you our Moot Court app features.
Thank you very much. So in terms of the Moot Court app features, students are able to switch the judge skins and the voices available. And this is done using the Leva menu on the left of the screen. There's also the option for subtitles for those who are hard of hearing, and this will help with accessibility. Some newer features that were implemented was the ability to customize the judge's questions. So as of now, we have generic questions that are typically asked in a moot court, but students can also input their questions that they created themselves, and whether these will be randomized or asked in a sequential order. In addition, there is a timer component in the scene. So in the menu, you're able to talk about the length of the entire moot session and when the warnings are available. And these warnings will be shown through the change of color in the circle beside the timer. And in addition, if students have to leave at any point, they have the option to pause the Moot app entirely. So this semester, we wanted to focus on giving students control of their own mooting experience. So they were able to customize the timers, including how often judges speak, how long the entire presentation is, and the warning times. In addition, through the menu, they're able to adjust the judges' questions and how frequently they are asked and what questions they will be asked. In addition, last semester when we were trying to decide on the animation for the judges, we used deep motion to generate both the models and the animations. Although this semester we optimized animation processing times through a pipeline using both deep motion, Mixamo, and Plask AI for smoother loading times. And in terms of additional content, since Moot Court is a learning experience, the additional resources given include both the typical experience for first-year Moot students, criteria for self-reflection, and formal etiquette, including dress code and typical procedures.
So since our project is quite new, here are some possible next steps for our development side. So first, we would like to optimize the speech synthesis and connect the customization interface to the presentation components. And we also would like to introduce the multi-user server, which would enable the students to ask questions to each other through the internet. And we also want to look more into speech recognition to detect the speech of the student using the application.
In terms of design and implementation of new functionalities, we were kind of in the works for, like Rosalie mentioned, a multi-user function where students can message each other a set of questions that they have, and then automatically we can copy and paste that into our setup page, and then they can practice the questions that their peers have also set up. And then we will also be, we are planning to do some full-scale user testing. So that means with our current version, we want to test our application to see if there's anything we need to work out. So full-scale user testing would be from seeing them use the application to gathering some qualitative data like that. So thank you for listening.